The dust swirled across the sun-parched street of Fort Collins, Colorado territory. It was 1875. Morgan Quinn rode into town with nothing but 2 revolvers, a wounded shoulder, and enough pride to fill the whole damned Rocky Mountain range. He had been shot 3 days prior. A dispute with cattle rustlers that had left 2 men dead, and Morgan with a bullet hole that still oozed blood through his makeshift bandage whenever he shifted in the saddle. Morgan's chestnut mare trudged wearily down the main thoroughfare. Her head hung low from the grueling journey, mirroring the exhaustion in her rider's eyes. The town was awake and bustling despite the early hour. Merchants swept their storefronts. Ladies in calico dresses strolled past with baskets of fresh goods. Men in suspenders gathered outside the telegraph office, exchanging news and gossip. Morgan paid them little mind. He needed a doctor, a drink, and a bed, in that precise order. He dismounted outside Zimmerman's general store, wincing as his boots hit the ground. The world tilted momentarily. He steadied himself against the hitching post, refusing to show weakness. Fort Collins might be more civilized than some of the mining camps he frequented, but a man's reputation still meant everything in these parts. "Your horse looks about ready to collapse, mister." The voice was clear, confident, and came from his left. Morgan turned, squinting against the morning sun. A woman stood before him. She was dressed practically in a simple blue skirt and white blouse with rolled-up sleeves. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a loose braid, revealing a face that bore the slight tan of someone who spent considerable time outdoors. "She's fine," Morgan replied curtly. The woman stepped closer, her eyes narrowing as she assessed him. "You, on the other hand, are bleeding through your shirt." Morgan glanced down at his shoulder. A crimson stain had indeed spread wider than before. "It's nothing. Nothing that could kill you if it festers," she countered, placing her hands on her hips. "I am Nora Zimmerman. My father owns this store, and I assist Dr. Holloway 3 days a week. You need medical attention. I appreciate your concern, Miss Zimmerman, but I have handled worse. I'm sure you have, Mr. Quinn." Morgan blinked. She knew his name. No, he had misheard. "I am Nora Zimmerman," she repeated, as if reading his confusion. "And I do not care what you have handled before. That wound needs cleaning and proper dressing." Morgan's jaw tightened. "I do not need saving, Miss Zimmerman." A smile spread across her face, transforming her from merely pretty to something that made Morgan's chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with his wound. "Good thing I am not leaving either," she replied. She stepped forward to take the reins of his horse. "I will stable your mare while you drag yourself to the doctor's office. That white building at the end of the street, or I can fetch the sheriff to carry you there if you would prefer." Morgan stared at her. He was caught between annoyance and admiration. Women in his experience fell into 2 categories: the delicate flowers of society who fainted at the sight of blood, and the hardened types who worked in saloons and had long stopped caring about much of anything. Nora Zimmerman fit neither mold. "I will walk," he finally said. "Wise choice." She nodded, taking his mare's reins. "Go on, then. Tell Dr. Holloway I sent you. I will bring your belongings once your horse is settled." Morgan hesitated. He was not accustomed to trusting strangers with his possessions, especially not his prized Winchester rifle secured in the saddle holster. Nora seemed to read his thoughts. "Your rifle will remain with your horse, Mr. Quinn. If you are worried about theft, you should know my father was a sharpshooter in the war, and he taught me well. Nothing will happen to your belongings." Too exhausted to argue further, Morgan nodded and started down the street toward the doctor's office. Behind him, he heard Nora speaking softly to his mare. Her voice was gentler than it had been with him. Dr. Holloway turned out to be a silver-haired man with spectacles and steady hands. He cleaned and dressed Morgan's wound without unnecessary conversation, except to confirm that the bullet had passed clean through. "You are lucky, son," he said, securing the bandage. "An inch to the left, and we would be having a different conversation." "Luck had nothing to do with it," Morgan replied. "I moved." The doctor's eyebrows rose. "Quick reflexes, then. You will need them if you intend to stay in Fort Collins. I do not intend to stay anywhere for long." "Most drifters say that," Dr. Holloway observed, washing his hands in a basin, "until they find a reason to plant roots." Before Morgan could respond, the door opened. Nora entered, carrying his saddlebags. "I have arranged for your horse to be stabled at Peterson's livery," she informed him. "She is being fed and watered as we speak." "Much obliged," Morgan replied, reaching for his wallet. "What do I owe you, Doctor?" Dr. Holloway named his price. It was reasonable enough, and Morgan paid him without complaint. When he turned to Nora, she shook her head. "The stabling fee is settled for today. My father trades with Mr. Peterson." Morgan frowned. "I do not accept charity, Miss Zimmerman." "It is not charity, Mr. Quinn. It is common decency. You can settle your account with Peterson yourself tomorrow." She looked him over with a critical eye. "For now, you need rest. There is a boarding house 3 doors down, Mrs. Wallace's place. Tell her I sent you, and she will give you a clean room." Morgan stood, testing his shoulder. The pain was still present, but duller now. "You seem to be directing a lot of my affairs, Miss Zimmerman." "Someone has to," she replied without missing a beat. "You clearly were not managing well on your own." Dr. Holloway coughed to disguise a laugh. Morgan narrowed his eyes but found himself lacking the energy to take offense. "I will see to my own accommodations," he said firmly. "As you wish," Nora replied, "but Mrs. Wallace serves the best breakfast in town." With that, she nodded goodbye to the doctor and left. Her skirts swished around her ankles. Morgan watched her go. He felt as though he had just survived an encounter more dangerous than the gunfight that had left him wounded. He did end up at Mrs. Wallace's boarding house. Not because Nora had suggested it, he told himself, but because it was the first place he found. The rooms were clean, the rates fair, and Mrs. Wallace did indeed promise an excellent breakfast. After securing his belongings, Morgan made his way to the saloon across the street. The Silverbuck was quiet. Only a handful of patrons nursed drinks at scattered tables. Morgan ordered whiskey and found a corner seat. He was on his second drink when the Batwing door swung open. 3 men entered. They were trail-worn and dusty. They had the hard eyes of men who made their living by intimidation. Morgan recognized the type immediately. He kept his expression neutral as they approached the bar. "Whiskey," the tallest one demanded, slapping coins onto the counter. His gaze swept the room. It paused momentarily on Morgan before moving on. "You seen a man named Blackwell pass through?" he asked the bartender. "Dark-haired fellow, about 30, has a scar across his chin." The bartender shook his head. "Ain't seen nobody like that." The man grunted. He threw back his drink and gestured for another. "He is around these parts somewhere. Took something that don't belong to him." Morgan kept his eyes on his glass, but his senses heightened. These men were trouble. After finishing his drink, he left the saloon and walked the length of the main street. He needed to know the layout of Fort Collins. It was larger than he initially thought. As evening approached, Morgan found himself drawn back to Zimmerman's general store. He told himself it was to thank Nora, but a nagging voice suggested other motivations. The store was busy. Behind the counter stood an older man with Nora's same auburn hair streaked with gray. "Looking for something specific, Mr. Quinn." He turned to find Nora approaching, carrying a crate of canned peaches. "Just getting acquainted with the town," he replied. "And how do you find Fort Collins so far?" "Civilized, more than I expected." She smiled. We are not all frontier savages here, Mr. Quinn. We have schools, churches, and even a small library. And yet you still have need of men like me." Her movements paused. "And what kind of man are you, exactly?" Morgan hesitated. He wasn't in the habit of discussing his profession. But something about Nora Zimmerman made him want to be honest. "I track things that are lost and return them to their rightful owners. For a fee. A bounty hunter," she stated rather than asked. "Among other things." "And who are you hunting here?" "No one at the moment." Nora studied him. Her expression was unreadable. "Well, Mr. Quinn, I hope your recovery is swift. If you need supplies, we offer fair prices." Morgan found himself oddly disappointed by her sudden dismissive tone. "I will keep that in mind." As he turned to leave, her voice stopped him. "Mr. Quinn, those men at the saloon earlier, they are looking for someone named Blackwell." Morgan turned, surprised. "You have good sources of information, Miss Zimmerman." "Small towns thrive on gossip," she replied with a shrug. "Be careful around them. They do not have honest faces." "Few men in my line of work do, Miss Zimmerman." "I suspect that is not entirely true," she said, meeting his eyes directly. "Some just wear their hardships more visibly than others." Before Morgan could respond, a customer approached Nora. The moment was lost. He departed the store with a curious feeling in his chest, as if he had been seen in a way he hadn't experienced in a very long time. The next morning, Morgan awoke to the smell of coffee and baking bread. He dressed carefully. The wound looked clean. After breakfast, Morgan headed to the livery. The stable hand informed him that Miss Zimmerman had arranged for the horse to be groomed and fed special oats. She was right, Morgan admitted, checking his mare. "Miss Nora usually is," the stable hand replied. After paying for the stable services, Morgan decided to walk the perimeter of the town. As he approached the sheriff's office, the door swung open. One of the men from the saloon emerged. He was arguing with a broad-shouldered man wearing a star. The sheriff nodded curtly and turned back into his office. The other man stalked away, his expression thunderous. Morgan waited until he was out of sight before approaching. "Can I help you?" the lawman asked as Morgan entered. "Morgan Quinn. Just passing through." "Sheriff Thomas Wilcox. You carrying any bounty papers?" "Not at present. Taking some time to heal. Dr. Holloway patched you up?" "He did. Efficient man. One of our finest." The sheriff leaned back in his chair. "Those men asking about someone named Blackwell. You know anything about that?" Morgan shook his head. "Never heard the name before yesterday. They claim to be employed by a cattle baron from Wyoming." The sheriff's tone suggested skepticism. "You stay clear of them. They have got the look of trouble." "I intend to." But Morgan knew intentions rarely survived contact with reality. He left the office and wandered toward the edge of town. He spotted a familiar figure in a garden plot beside a small house. Nora Zimmerman. Without conscious decision, Morgan found himself walking toward her. "Good morning, Miss Zimmerman." She looked up, shading her eyes. "Mr. Quinn." "Out exploring, getting my bearings." "This your home?" Nora nodded. "My father and I live above the store, but I keep this garden plot. Would you like some coffee?" The invitation surprised him, but he nodded. They sat on a small porch. The silence was companionable. "How long have you been tracking people, Mr. Quinn?" "About 8 years, since the war ended." "So you found a new way to survive. We all do what we must." "And what has it shown you about yourself, Mr. Quinn?" The question caught him off guard. "That I am better at ending things than building them," he finally answered. Nora considered this. "Perhaps you simply have not found the right foundation yet." Before Morgan could respond, a shout came from the direction of town. A young boy ran toward them, waving frantically. "Miss Nora! Pa says to come quick. There is trouble at the store." Nora was on her feet instantly. "What kind of trouble, Tommy?" "Those strangers. They are arguing with your pa." "Sheriff Wilcox is there, but Pa said to fetch you right away." Morgan stood, his hand instinctively moving toward his revolver. "I am coming with you," he said. "I do not need protection." "No, you probably do not, but those men will not hesitate to use violence. Having another gun present might make them think twice." Nora hesitated, then nodded. They hurried toward town. At the store, a small crowd had gathered. Sheriff Wilcox stood on the porch. Inside, the three men faced off against Nora's father. "Wait," Morgan said, catching Nora's arm. "Let me get a better look." They approached cautiously. "I am telling you for the last time," Mr. Zimmerman was saying. "I have never met anyone named Blackwell." "You are lying, old man," the tallest stranger retorted. Sheriff Wilcox spoke up. "Gentlemen, you cannot go around threatening honest businessmen." The leader turned to the sheriff. "We are looking for a man named Jacob Blackwell. He stole valuable property." Nora slipped from Morgan's side and entered the store. "What seems to be the problem?" she asked calmly. "This ain't women's business, miss. It is when you are threatening my father." Morgan stepped into the store. He positioned himself where the three men could clearly see him, and his holstered revolvers. He didn't speak. He simply stood with an air of watchful readiness. The leader noticed him. His aggressive posture subtly relaxed. "Perhaps we have been misinformed," he said. "We will continue our inquiries elsewhere." "That would be wise," Sheriff Wilcox agreed. The three men left. As they passed Morgan, the leader paused. "You do well to mind your own business, stranger." "Interesting," Morgan replied. "I was about to give you the same advice." After they departed, the tension dissipated. "Are you all right, father?" Nora asked. "I am fine, Nora. They just startled me." Morgan approached the counter. "They seemed to think I was harboring some fugitive," Mr. Zimmerman said. "Do you know anyone by that name?" Morgan pressed. "No, I have never heard of him." Nora gestured to Morgan. "Father, this is Mr. Morgan Quinn." Mr. Zimmerman's gaze sharpened. "Thank you for your assistance, Mr. Quinn. I didn't do much. Just stood there. Sometimes that is enough." Morgan leaned against the counter. "Those men are hunting something else, and using this Blackwell story as cover. If a man steals from a cattle baron, they don't send hired guns to recover papers. They send the law." Harold and Nora exchanged glances. There was meaning in that look, a shared understanding that excluded him. "Well, whatever they are truly after, it has nothing to do with us," Nora declared, a bit too emphatically. Morgan took his leave, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the Zimmermans knew more than they were admitting. That evening, Morgan dined at the hotel restaurant. At a corner table sat the three strangers. They watched him but made no move. Then Nora entered. She was dressed elegantly, accompanied by a young man in a tailored suit. Morgan felt an unexpected twinge of annoyance. It was none of his business. Yet he found himself watching them. Nora glanced in his direction. She offered a small nod. Morgan finished his coffee and left without looking back. He walked past the saloon. On impulse, he entered. He had been there 20 minutes when Sheriff Wilcox entered with a deputy. They went upstairs. 10 minutes later, they reappeared, escorting a prisoner. The man was young, dark hair, and a prominent scar across his chin. Blackwell. The prisoner looked up. His gaze connected with Morgan's. There was a desperate plea in that look. Morgan followed them to the jail from a distance. Then he waited in the shadows. Something significant was happening. Around 2 in the morning, the three strangers converged on the jail. They moved with military precision. The leader created a distraction. His companions forced entry through a side window. A scuffle. Silence. They emerged with the prisoner. Morgan faced a choice. Intervene now or follow. His instincts urged the latter. He shadowed them as they took the prisoner to the stables, saddled horses, and rode east. Morgan returned to his boarding house, gathered his gear, and retrieved his mare. By the time he was clear of town, the strangers had a head start. But Morgan was confident. He rode into the night. His thoughts turned to Nora. Were they connected to this? Dawn broke as Morgan spotted his quarry. The three men and their prisoner had made camp beside a creek. Morgan approached on foot. Then he heard horses. From the south, a group of riders approached. At least 6. The 3 strangers scrambled to their feet. "Your friends are persistent, Blackwell," the leader sneered, pulling the prisoner up. Morgan tensed. The approaching riders were a mix of cowboys and lawmen. "Tell them to back off or I will put a bullet in you right here," the leader shouted. "They won't listen," Blackwell yelled back. "You have underestimated what you are dealing with." Gunfire erupted. One of the strangers fired. Chaos ensued. Blackwell broke free and ran toward the creek. The leader pursued, firing wildly. Morgan saw Blackwell stumble. Making a split-second decision, Morgan emerged from cover. He intercepted Blackwell, pulling him behind a boulder. "Who the hell?" Blackwell gasped. "You are the stranger from town." "No time for introductions," Morgan replied. "It is not what you think," Blackwell shouted over the gunfire. "Those papers, they are evidence. Corruption in the territorial government." Morgan peered around the boulder. The newcomers were winning. "Those riders friends of yours?" "Federal marshals," Blackwell nodded. "And some ranch hands. They have been helping me gather evidence." "And the Zimmermans. Harold's brother was my partner. He was killed last month. The Zimmermans were protecting me." "So the strangers were government assassins." The gunfire died down. The leader had surrendered. Morgan helped Blackwell up. "Let's get that wound seen to." As they emerged, rifles swung in their direction. "Easy," Morgan called. "This man needs a doctor." The lead marshal approached. "Who are you?" "Morgan Quinn. I followed these men when they broke Blackwell out. I am Marshal Dawson. We have been tracking these agents for weeks." They returned to town by mid-morning. Morgan slipped away to the boarding house. He was washing up when a knock came. Nora stood in the hallway. "You helped Jacob Blackwell," she said. "I happened to be in the right place." "Thank you. Jacob was a friend. My uncle was his partner." She sank onto the chair. "When those men came asking questions, I feared the worst." "You took quite a risk," Morgan said. "Neither am I playing games, Mr. Quinn. My family came west for a new beginning. This community matters to us." Morgan admired her conviction. Another knock. Harold Zimmerman entered, accompanied by a distinguished man. Thomas Watson, Jr. "We owe you a debt of gratitude, Mr. Quinn," Watson said. He produced an envelope. $500. Morgan hesitated. "Take it," Nora urged. "You earned it." Morgan accepted. "If you are ever looking for employment," Watson added, "the Watson Ranch could use a man like you. I will keep that in mind." After they left, Nora lingered. "Will you be leaving Fort Collins now?" There was a challenge in her tone. "I haven't decided," Morgan said. "Well, if you stay, Father and I are hosting a gathering tomorrow. You would be welcome. I don't own proper attire. It is nothing formal, Mr. Quinn." 7 o'clock. After she left, Morgan stared at the money. He could go anywhere. But the thought of leaving Fort Collins seemed less appealing than before. The next evening, Morgan stood outside the Zimmerman home. He had cleaned up as best he could. Nora opened the door. She wore a deep green dress. "Mr. Quinn, I was beginning to think you would not come. Almost didn't." Please, join us." The room was filled with people. Blackwell was there, bandaged but smiling. "The mysterious Mr. Quinn," Blackwell called out. "My rescuer!" The evening was pleasant. Morgan found himself relaxing. Later, he found himself alone with Nora on the balcony. "Thank you for coming," she said. "It was pleasant. Your father is a good man. Have you decided how long you will stay?" "I thought I might stay a while longer. Perhaps see if the Watson offer has substance." Nora's expression brightened. "Is that what you want? To learn something new?" "I'm not sure what I want anymore, Miss Zimmerman. But lately, I have been wondering if there might be more to life than just surviving it." "There is, Mr. Quinn. Much more." "Will I see you tomorrow?" she asked. "You will. Good night, Morgan. I am Nora, by the way. Not Miss Zimmerman. Good night, Nora." Morgan remained on the balcony. He had ridden into town expecting a brief stop. Now he was considering staying and falling for a woman who challenged him. It should have frightened him. Instead, he felt a curious sense of anticipation. The following weeks brought changes. Morgan accepted the job at the Watson Ranch. He worked security. He and Nora grew closer. They met for coffee, for walks. He told her of his past. She told him of her hopes. "We all have regrets," Nora told him one evening. "What matters is what we choose to do with the time we have left." One afternoon, Harold approached Morgan. "A word, Mr. Quinn." Inside the office, Harold was direct. "My daughter thinks highly of you. I need to know your intentions. My intentions are honorable, sir." "Admiration is well and good. But what future can you offer her? You have been a drifter. I can't predict the future, Mr. Zimmerman. But for the first time in years, I am thinking about one. And Nora is part of that thinking." Harold studied him. "If your intentions are serious, I won't stand in your way. But hurt her, and you will answer to me." "Understood, sir." October arrived. Morgan was riding back to town when he noticed a commotion at the sheriff's office. "Trouble?" he asked Watson. "Stage was robbed yesterday," Watson replied. "Driver killed. Bandits headed east. Sheriff is organizing a posse." "Any description?" "3 or 4 men, one with a southern accent, Louisiana or Mississippi." Morgan frowned. That description tugged at his memory. Elijah Prescott, a former Confederate officer turned outlaw. Morgan had tracked him 3 years ago. Prescott had a pattern: 3 robberies, increasing in value. Then a big score. The Army payroll was due through Fort Collins on Tuesday. Morgan joined the posse. They tracked the bandits to a cabin. A gunfight ensued. 1 outlaw was captured. "Where is Prescott?" Morgan demanded. The man's eyes widened. "Don't know what you're talking about." Morgan found a map. It marked a canyon north of town. "They are planning an ambush here," he told Sheriff Wilcox. "Tuesday, when the payroll comes through." They returned to town on Saturday night. The church social was in full swing. Morgan found Nora serving cider. "You're back," she said, relief washing over her. "We found one of them. Prescott is planning an ambush. Be careful," she said. They sat together. People stared. "Does the talk bother you?" she asked. "No," Morgan admitted. "It doesn't. Would you care to dance, Mr. Quinn?" "I'm not much of a dancer, neither am I, but I would like to try with you." They moved to the music. Morgan held her close. "I should take you home," he said finally. At her door, she turned to him. "Morgan, I have never felt this way about anyone. It frightens me." "I feel the same," he admitted. Without overthinking, he kissed her. It was brief, tender, and electric. "Good night, Morgan. Come back to me safely on Tuesday." "I will." Monday evening, they walked along the river. "After tomorrow," Morgan said, "I would like to speak with your father formally." She smiled. I would welcome it very much. I can't offer wealth. I never wanted riches. Just a good man. Promise me you will come back, she whispered. I promise. Nothing could keep me from you. Tuesday dawned cold. Morgan prepared the trap with Sheriff Wilcox. A decoy stage, soldiers in disguise. Before he left, Harold Zimmerman knocked on his door. Nora told me of your intentions, Harold said. I had hoped to speak with you properly, sir. If you are planning to ask for permission to court my daughter, you have it. Thank you, sir. See that you return safely. She has lost enough people. The decoy stage rolled out. The canyon was a natural choke point. Steep walls, limited visibility. Morgan sat inside, alert. Gunfire erupted from the cliffs. Bullets splintered the roof. The driver fought the horses. Now! Morgan shouted. He dove out, rolling behind a boulder. The counterattack began. Lawmen on the rim opened fire. The outlaws were trapped. Morgan spotted a figure descending the wall, a tall man in a wide-brimmed hat. Prescott. Morgan fired. He hit Prescott's shoulder. The outlaw reached his horse. Morgan broke cover, racing toward him. It's over, Prescott. The outlaw turned. Quinn should have known. He drew a hidden derringer. Morgan fired first. Prescott crumpled, but pain exploded in Morgan's side. He fell to one knee. Morgan! Sheriff Wilcox ran toward him. Are you hit? Yes. The bullet had entered below his ribs. Need to get you back to town. The ride back was a blur of agony. Morgan drifted in and out. Tell Nora, he murmured. I promised. He woke in a strange room. Nora was there, sleeping in a chair. Nora. She woke instantly. Morgan! Thank God. How do you feel? Like I've been kicked by a mule. You are in Dr. Holloway's recovery room. The bullet missed anything vital. I promised I would come back. Yes, you did. Though I would prefer a better condition next time. Prescott? Dead. The ambush was a success. Good. My father told me you spoke. We did. Then we have matters to discuss. Indeed we do. Morgan tried to sit up. Pain slammed him back. Lie still, Nora scolded. I didn't save you just to have you injure yourself. You didn't save me, he reminded her. You just pointed me to the doctor. I'm still not leaving, Morgan. Not now. Not ever. I won't ask you to. 2 weeks later, Morgan was walking with a cane. He stopped Nora on the street. Nora, when I am fully recovered, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Yes, she answered. Yes, Morgan Quinn. He slipped a pearl ring onto her finger. They were married in November. The whole town attended. Mrs. Quinn, Morgan murmured as they danced. Like the beginning of an adventure, she replied. I never expected this. I found home. In you. They bought a house. Morgan continued working for Watson. Spring brought news. A baby, Nora told him. Morgan was terrified and overjoyed. Thomas Harold Quinn was born in October. He held his son, marveling at the tiny fingers. He looks like you, Nora whispered. Parenthood softened Morgan. The drifter was gone. On Thomas's second birthday, Morgan found Nora in the kitchen. What are you thinking about? She asked. The first time we met, you said you weren't leaving. I was right. Yes, I didn't need saving. I needed you. I love you, Nora Quinn, and I love you. Together they returned to their guests, to their son, to the life they had created, a life built on courage, on hope, and on the love that had turned a drifter into a man with roots as deep as the mountains. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe.